Hi there, this is Tim, and in this video, I want to apply a bit of logical deduction to demonstrate how any of the theories about chemtrails are false and completely bogus on their face. Now, in my own YouTube channel, recently I've been coming across a lot of chemtrail videos and supposedly offering proof as to why these chemtrails are real. So here's one supposedly talking about an engineer. Here's one that supposedly talked with a NASA scientist admitting to why these chemtrails are real. So I wanted to talk to that. Just as a bit of background, what are chemtrails? Well, first of all, this is actually a contrail or the evaporated gas coming out of a jet engine as it's flying. But chemtrail proponents say that this is some poisonous gas to do us or the earth some harm. Now, they're not unified on what that harm is other than its ill intent. So I've seen, for instance, it's to cause weather catastrophe to encourage more construction jobs for the Democrats. That's just one example. Second is that the chemtrails conspiracy is worldwide. And I can at least talk to part of this from experience. I've traveled to a couple of nations, both in Europe and in Asia, over the last 10 years. And when I've been in those nations, of course, I've seen planes flying overhead, and planes flying overhead in those nations are emitting trails like this. So, yes, this phenomenon does indeed seem to be happening worldwide. Okay? And that chemtrails are happening by both civilian and military cooperation. That is, of course, the military is involved, and their planes are emitting chemtrails, and they also subcontract out to the civilian fleet to go ahead and emit the chemtrails as well. So I saw one chemtrail video where they're showing supposedly the chemtrails coming out of a Boeing plane that was going from San Francisco to Honolulu. And finally, chemtrails have been happening since at least the 60s. Now, I've found earlier claims going back into the 40s, but the chemtrail conspiracy theories really seem to pick up some momentum in the 60s. So this is at least a 50-year-old phenomenon. So let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's say chemtrails are real, all right, and it's actually happening. So ask yourself, what would it take to implement chemtrails, all right, if this whole thing is actually real? So, first of all, you're going to need global cooperation. That you're going to need all these governments to come together and over time, since it's been going on for 50 years, to agree to go ahead and implement this. And this global cooperation, it would have to exceed the global cooperation of what's happening at the UN, frankly. The UN, of course, they have a lot of discord over there, a lot of disagreement, but chemtrails would have to exceed that substantially for global cooperation. Then the planes would have to be modified with chemical tanks to actually hold the chemtrail fluid to spray it out as it's flying. So this means that both, at least Boeing and Airbus, would have to be able to modify their airplanes with chemical tanks to hold these. Then, of course, you actually need the chemical production plants. And I imagine you'd be between, say, 1 and 2 dozen throughout the world. You need a couple, let's say 3 in North America, 2 or 3 in South America. You need at least probably half dozen in Europe, some in Asia, a couple in South Africa, Australia, and elsewhere. Then, of course, not only do you need to produce the chemical, you have to have a transport network to get those chemicals from the production facility to the airport to go ahead and load it up on the plane. All right? And that's just kind of the infrastructure side of it. Then you also need technical talent. That, of course, chemtrails are a technical product, therefore you need technical people and engineers to go ahead and to build up product and to continue to refine it over time. Then you would need a support crew to go with it. Okay, so of course to make the machinery go along, you would need a lot of administrative workers, and you would need a lot of just grunt workers to get the actual operational components in place. And then not only would you need this, of course, you would need the whole supply network behind it as well. Then you'd be able to have some mechanism to suppress all lawsuits going on in the nations. That, of course, this is a dangerous chemical. People are going to be exposed to it. Lawsuits are going to happen. And when those lawsuits come up, they have to have some mechanism to suppress them, no matter which nation that lawsuit happens in. And finally, you're going to have, of course, the chemtrail cocktail itself. That is that they're going to produce this product, the chemtrail, to go ahead and put on these planes. Okay, so that's just kind of an overview of the whole operational machinery that would be needed to implement these chemtrails. Now, let's take a step back for a moment. How would you know something is real as opposed to false? That's a real piece of evidence or a real piece of news. And there are a couple ways to answer this. The first way is it's capable of going through the scientific process, that it can be observed, measured, tested, and repeated. So, as a classic example, Newtonian physics is very prone to this process, that it can be measured scientifically, okay? Evidence can be independently examined and verified. So, as another easy example, courtroom evidence often goes through this process. That it's also peer-reviewed in scientific journals. So think about in the 80s, there was sudden press over cold fusion or nuclear fusion happening at very cold temperatures. Some scientists claim to have done it. When they publish, and there's a lot of hoopla about it. Now, when he published the article, a lot of the other scientists, they couldn't reproduce his claims, and therefore it was eventually deemed false. And classically is that you have media review, that the facts are talked about and verified in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, London Times, and the other international newspapers. Let me give you an example of this. So here's one of the chemtrail conspiracy theorists talking about how the CIA director admitted that chemtrails are real. So when I went ahead and I looked it up, this news website, Metabunk, is debunking that. And he's talking about what he actually said and how these guys got it totally wrong. So while these guys made a claim, all right, another source debunked that claim. Instead, what I want to see, if these guys make a claim, I want to see that claim instead verified in other media outlets, and especially those outlets which we have a high regard in. Okay? So, let's go back to this. If chemtrails are real, you need to have global cooperation that's better than the UN. You got to have all these airplanes. And frankly, a lot of these airplanes should have been retired by now, so they should still be out there. You'd also have all the engineers on the airplanes who put these together be silent. All right? You have to have everyone working at the chemical facility plants keeping silent. You'd have to have all these plants in secret throughout the world. You'd have to have this whole transportation network in secret, and everybody who works for them in secret as well. You'd have to have all the people involved with it, not only working for it, but all suppliers. And given that this has been going on for 50 years, you're on your second generation now. So therefore, on a global, worldwide basis, this would be at least 10,000 people. So think, even if you only 1% of these people talked, that would still be way over 100 people. And you'd also have to assume that all these people are mindless drones who obediently obey their government and whatever they're told to do, and that they never disobey and they never talk when they're retired. All right. Now, of course, all the lawsuits are successfully suppressed, and that no sample of the chemical has ever been produced. All right. So you may have heard the expression, extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. It's not our job to prove that chemtrails are false. Rather, it's the proponent's job to prove that chemtrails are true. All right? And so, given this vast machinery that's going on here, and this has been going on for 50 years, all right? If chemtrails are true, these guys should really have a pretty easy job of penetrating this and being able to show that it's true. All right, and quit saying that it's some worldwide conspiracy that they've been able to successfully suppress. And take a look at Watergate, for instance, the political scandal in the 70s. That was only 4 people, and those 4 people they were able to penetrate it, and those 4 people talked. Here you have over 10,000 people, all right? And it just can't be 1 or 2 talking, all right? You got to have hundreds of people talking, and what they say is also verified by other independent sources. Okay, it's not just 1 or 2 cranks coming out of the woodwork. Okay, you have to be able to show location of these chemical plants. All right, this would leak so much evidence. All right, and frankly, if these chemtrail proponents haven't been able to get to any of this mountain of evidence, they must be the world's greatest slackers. So leave it up to you to decide what you think is more likely, that this is the best conspiracy that mankind has ever put together, or that chemtrails are just false. All right, I hope this helps. Cheers.